So, just real quick with the vacation stuff, you guys going to your tropical places, I think you really missed the underrated northern Michigan 35 degrees and rain snow mix where everything's
Mm,
brown. I think you really missed the boat here. It was
we
nice.
did. Yeah, actually, I didn't take a boat. Well, I did a little bit, but it's mostly like planes. So
I did the planes, trains, automobiles thing. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking out the window right now. It's nice and brown. It's what 42 today or 45, and but no rain. So,
oh,
We're
75 and sunny here.
we're gonna get up into the 50s today.
see, there you go. Look at
Gonna
that.
Oh,
happen.
let's go. Yep, we'll enjoy that sweatshirt and pant weather.
It's, it's I'm gonna have my windows down today. I can tell you that much driving
Oh,
around.
Welcome to Plug In for More, brought to you by EVUniverse.com. EV Universe is your one stop shop for all things related to the electric vehicle. Here on this podcast, our goal is to educate, inspire, and hopefully make your transition into the electric vehicle marketplace a lot less intimidating. And now, here are your hosts, Mike, Tom, and Bryant.
Bryant got to see Silverado EV up close. That was pretty cool.
yep.
What'd you think of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I liked it. I was actually really surprised. I was just pulling into a charger, and there was actually two of them there. They're both test vehicles. I was kind of bummed because I was taking videos and pictures, and the guys were giving me, kind of like mean looks. I was gonna go in the look in the interior, but they would definitely not let me do that. But I would say, first impressions, having driven the Lightning, seen and been in the Rivian, I think this is bigger. It's bigger than
Hmm.
the Lightning, just a little bit. I would say from a perspective of how wide it is, it just feels like a much bigger truck than the F-150. And then it really looks like the Honda Ridgeline. Like that is the styling of it. The Honda Ridgeline is probably right down to the T what it is. But overall, it's a really attractive truck. And the people in the parking lot around me, not even EV buyers, were really interested. They were. This one guy pulled up in his Silverado, and he's like, "Man, you geeking out? That new EV it looks pretty cool." And we had a good conversation. But yeah, I would say I'm really excited to see what the final, these are test vehicles, so I'm assuming they'll look
Sure.
somewhat like it, right? But the final one, I think, is gonna look sharp.
I mean, I know I want one. I mean, I think Tom and I both put reservations down on the Denali version. It's a sharp looking truck.
Yeah. I've got a first day reservation for the Silverado as well.
Mm.
So I got one for both of those, but I also got the invite to build a Lightning.
Me too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I got the invite. I'm definitely not going to be getting one of those.
I think you need a couple more trucks though, right?
I think, yeah, I think that'll help my marriage out quite a bit if I just keep buying more cars. My wife's going to be super thrilled. So,
It's been 2 months since you bought a new vehicle.
I know you're getting the itch yet. Come on.
yeah, kind of. I mean, it's already there. It never really goes away. So, yeah, she's being really really good about my addiction problems with these vehicles. But I think it's best for everybody, us included, if I slow down a little bit on that.
I would say the only thing about the Silverado I saw, and I know it's a test vehicle, guys, but when I pulled in, I was like, I don't know, 38% EV, EV6 charging. I threw it in, went up to 90 in, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. I came back out, and the Silverado was still like at 56. So I know, like I said, these aren't the real ones. These are test, but they better fix the charging because I charged up and lapped that guy on my car. So that was kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
You know, that's one thing I've noticed with the Rivian too is the charging speed is fine. I mean, on the home charger, it's not really any different than my other vehicles, but when you have such large batteries in these things, it's just going to take longer. I mean, that's something I don't think it's really being talked about. They talk about like what's the charging curve and what's the max charging speed. Well, it's like these things are way less efficient and much bigger batteries. It's just going to take longer. It's like there's no way around it. I mean, when you look at something like the Hummer, which I've got a buddy who was talking to me about that yesterday because he wanted to get a Hummer. I'm like, have you seen how wide these things are? I'm like, you're not going to be able to get like a normal parking spot's going to be tough because they're like 8 inches wider than the Lightning. I mean, so they're super wide, but I mean that's like a 200 kilowatt battery. I mean, they're big. It's double. like a Tesla Model S or X.
Speaking of the Hummer EV, Brian, you're going to get one of those, aren't you? Because your wife was reaching out,
Oh yes,
campaigning.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
my
let's talk about that for a second. So randomly over the weekend, I get this text message like, "Hey, don't tell Bryant, but I really want a Hummer EV. How can I work this?" Um, from Bryant's wife, and so I just look at this message and go, should I respond to this or yeah, okay,
Yes.
I will. Yeah, I mean, and do right by my buddy or nope, no, not text his wife. Yes, this is how you get it. So this is how you convince him. But anyway, so what did she say? So what did
When's yours getting delivered?
yeah.
I mean, like, this is a weird problem to have. I'm trying to talk like this opposite of Mike. Like, my wife wants to buy all these EVs, and I'm like, no, I like the EV we have. But no, like, I don't like the Hummer, guys. Like, so like, let me back up. So the day we're leaving, after the Silverados, the next morning we're driving by, and there's a Hummer sitting at the charger, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like, look at that, it's amazing." And it's like, no, it's not amazing.
Mhm.
It's not. I hate that truck. It's like the biggest waste of EV space in the world. But no, I mean, there's cool things about it, don't get me wrong. But anytime a truck has to crab walk, like, come on. So we're not getting one. And I warned you both not to respond and antagonize her, but I'm sure you both did that. So
Yeah, don't worry. We
You
always
can
got your
count on
back
me
in
for
one way
that.
or the other. Yeah. I mean, they're cool. I mean, they're just they're really actually not practical at all. I mean, they're just like the bed's actually tiny. You can't park them anywhere.
agreed. They
Yeah.
they won't fit in a garage because they're so tall. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I
It's
think they're cool. They're just not practical.
it's about as useless as a Rivian, but just for the opposite reasons.
Okay. Now let's just clarify. Tom has never ridden in a Rivian. Just he's all making these assumptions on these headlights, which I love that Rivian, man. That thing is it's been a really good truck. And I'm defending it now because I feel like I have to. Poor Rivian.
I'm sure it's a great
Getting beat
truck.
up by Tom. It is. It is a really good truck.
Um, okay.
I mean, like,
So
the only thing more obnoxious than the Hummer is the Cybertruck.
That thing's gonna be sweet. Do you guys see the new April Fool's video of the crash test that never occurred? So it shows it like almost running into the wall in like 15 different perspectives.
it,
And it
yeah,
makes you think it's gonna actually hit the wall and it doesn't.
I saw a friend of the show, Aaron Jones. He was posting that video and making everybody watch it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you should. Yep.
Hmm.
Former Tesla employee. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So we hinted a little bit earlier where I was picking on these guys for taking tropical vacations, but Bryant got to see a really cool EV where he was at. Was it the Build Your Dreams EV?
Build Your Dreams EV.
For most people, they know it as BYD from China. That's just
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
I'd never seen it before. I mean, I pulled up, so I was in the Exumas, and it was actually let me back up a quick second. Having a gas powered vehicle in a small island community is a pain in the butt. So we rented a little tiny Honda Fit, and our last day there, of course, there's no gas, right? The gas stations are all empty. We waited in
Huh.
line for like 45 minutes for gas to be delivered. And throughout the whole time we're there, I was thinking, man, like, it'd be really like, I think the islanders would probably be the first people to adopt an EV because you could have solar panels easily on your roof, or even if not solar panels, just charge your EV. The island's only 36 miles long, so even on a 200 mile range EV, you can drive that island, 5 or 6 times, no problem. And just importing gas is such a pain in the butt. Like, waiting in line at a gas station for 45 minutes and then getting to the front and there's no gas. But yeah, so we're driving around and we saw the Build Your Own or Build Your Dreams BYD, China's biggest, I think one of their biggest vehicle manufacturers in the world. I think right behind Tesla. And I was actually really impressed. It reminds me a lot of the Fisker Ocean size, or like that smaller like CX-5 Mazda. Not a huge, massive EV, but I was really impressed. No one was around it, so I was able to look at it, look inside of it. The interior looks really well done. I don't know anything about the range or anything from the owner's perspective. Wasn't able to talk to them, but it was really a sharp looking EV, and it catches your eye. When I pulled up to it, I immediately like looked at it and knew it was kind of something cool. So I think it was. I'm not sure if you guys know if you can import them into the U.S. Obviously, we're outside of
Nope.
the United States, but you
No.
know,
I mean, that's one thing for our listeners is that BYD is not available in the US, and there's some talk of them coming over at some point, but we're not gonna be able to get our hands on that for a few years at a minimum before that would occur. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're fun to look at, but don't get your hopes up on driving one in the US anytime soon.
You're listening to the Plug In for More podcast. If you're looking for information on electric vehicles components, or information on how to reduce your carbon footprint, look no further than evuniverse.com. evuniverse.com is your one-stop shop for all things related to electric vehicle.
So one of the other topics we want to talk about with EVs is some of the other ancillary costs you might run into. We've talked a lot about saving money on fuel and electricity instead, but things like car insurance and registration fees that people don't often consider when they're looking for new cars, and it's something that is potentially different for an electric vehicle. Bryant has an extensive background in the insurance industry, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the insurance differences for an EV versus an ICE vehicle.
so yeah, we get a lot of questions. My day job's at Haggerty. We're a classic car, modern sports car enthusiast car company, insurance company, and we get a lot of questions daily if we'll insure a Tesla, if we're insure a Lucid, because people are finding it's a lot more expensive to insure these electric vehicles, and would it fit on a specialty policy like a Haggerty policy meant for more of a classic car or a collectible car? And so, the long story short is Haggerty doesn't really insure a lot of those types of vehicles because our policy is more meant for collector cars, not cars that are driven daily, and a lot of these cars are being driven daily. So, as far as the insurance industry goes, there's a lot of factors that fall into why it's more expensive to insure an electric vehicle generally. And we can talk about those. I think the four big ones really are around the technology of electric vehicles. So there's a lot of technology that is in electric vehicles. They tend to be leading the technology space, right? So think of Tesla and the self-driving, all the cameras. Even my EV6 doesn't have full self-driving, but it's got cameras everywhere. There's sensors everywhere. There's a lot of technology in the car that if you get into even a small fender bender, it's going to cost a lot of money to fix. And Mike, I think you have an example of this from your Tesla accident.
Yeah, so the accident I had was with a 2015 Tesla Model S P85D, and that was a fender bender. I mean, it was 5 miles an hour or less. I mean, it was really a small little accident, but um, with the camera up front and the sensors, I mean, that was a couple month long process to get it repaired, not only from just finding a new bumper and getting some of the new components, but also just the calibration. So the calibration of the sensors took an extra 3 days because they were having difficulty doing that. And that whole process, I believe it was like 16 hours for that tech to troubleshoot and fix what was going on with it. Now, that's not like a standard case, but with mine, it was something they ran into, and I think that kind of factors into the insurance costs that sometimes you're going to run into these things that are going to take longer than normal, and it really delayed things. Again, because I was expecting to get on Monday, and I didn't pick up the car until Friday because they just couldn't calibrate it. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. So you're going to take, in the insurance space, they call that severity. So how much an accident costs to completely fix the vehicle, right? And the severity of what you just described is a lot longer because of all those cameras and all of the costs that go associated with it. And then plus, if you have rental on your policy, now the insurance company is paying that much longer for rental. And so I think that dives into, I think, the number two reason why EVs are a little bit more expensive to insure is because generally they're taking longer to be repaired. Like you described, it's cameras, it's part availability, there's not a lot of shops that even know how to work on these types of cars. And think about the wait times we've experienced over the last year or two. Tom with his Mach-E, just getting the vehicle, let alone replacement parts. So then the insurance company's stuck paying rental for 3, 4, 5, 6 months when a normal vehicle would take 2 weeks. So that drives up the cost as well, for the vehicles. Um, I think the third reason is the battery replacement and the battery testing, and a lot of questions around what that looks like. So it's pretty easy. A friend of mine, she just had an accident. It was total out her Ford Excursion. It's pretty easy in that type of car to know, like, if the engine's damaged, right? It's pretty easy to figure out. On an EV, I think it's a little bit harder. Is the battery damaged? They have to run diagnostics. Mike, what are your thoughts on, like, battery replacements and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the battery replacement is number one, it's a huge cost if they have to replace the whole thing. And I think that goes back to some of the things we've heard about Tesla. I mean, right now they're just the biggest out there. So let's use them as an example. But when they replace a battery or a battery component, if they see that something needs to be replaced, they just replace the whole thing. And I noticed that even with a door panel, it was just a small piece of trim, but they replaced basically the whole door. They just showed up at my house and replaced the whole thing, which frankly seemed very wasteful. And maybe they took that door back and parted it out so it wasn't going to be just completely scrapped. But that's sort of analogous to what we're hearing with some of the battery replacement stuff. Is there's a piece on of it that's broken. They're not just going to fix that piece. They're just going to take out the whole thing, put a whole new one in, and so that just all of a sudden might be a $15 part, but now all of a sudden you're getting a $20,000 battery. Is that the case, forever? I doubt it. I think they're going to start, really digging in and finding some of these pieces and just, fixing those smaller expenses. But then on the newer Teslas, when you have these structural batteries, there's some real questions there as far as on like the new Model Ys and what's going to happen with the Cybertruck and some other ones when that battery is truly part of the whole frame of the car. If that gets damaged, are you just replacing the whole car? Like, is that even replaceable? Can you even fix that battery, or are you just scrapping the whole thing? I think that's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next, few months and years once those vehicles start coming out with those structural battery packs.
We're not gonna be able to give people an exact dollar amount, like how much their insurance is gonna go up, if at all. And maybe I'm in an anomaly with this, but my Mach-E is about $30 less a month than my Dodge Ram was for the same exact coverage. And I don't know if that's attributed to the safety features or just that I had a really fancy truck. Like, I'm not sure which, but for me, like, I didn't see an increase.
Tom, that's a good point. I think the safety features is probably an area. So we're talking about the physical damage of the vehicle. In severe accidents, though, EVs are also cutting edge with safety features, and so you might see some insurance companies actually save money because there's not severe injuries. Now that's just in general. My EV6 was about $100 every 6 months more than my Ram, so not a huge increase. To your point, it wasn't less expensive, but it wasn't insane. But I think also what we need to get into, though, is I think the very last reason why insurance generally, we're at Haggerty, we're getting hit up with Lucid and Teslas, is the performance of the vehicles. So this is pretty big because we run into this a lot. If you've never driven a supercar before, so if you go from, we call it like new money, or I call it like new money, or you become really wealthy, you're gonna get a McLaren or a Lamborghini, and you've never driven something like that before. We see a lot of accidents. Just Google it, right? So many people not even getting home and getting into accidents because they've never felt something like that before. And now you're getting Teslas and other EVs in the 3, 2, 3, 4 second 0 to 60. You're talking about supercar performance in a family sedan. People aren't used to handling that. And I think that's another differentiation too. If you're going to get a Tesla, it's 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. You're talking like six supercar versus, some of the Audi Q4 e-trons are, 7, 8 seconds. So I think that also factors into the vehicle insurance of how performance driven is it versus, you're a Mustang and my EV6 still quick, 4 or 5 second 0 to 60, but we're not talking like 0 to 60 in two
Right.
seconds.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, you think about that even just a few years ago. I mean, that your cars that you're driving now, which aren't even the performance version of those vehicles, are still faster than most of the I think most or if not all the Ferraris of the 80s and some of the 90s. I
Yeah.
mean, and these are, again, they're not even the fast ones. So, I mean, if you look at even the Rivian truck that I've got 0 to 60 in 3.0, and that's faster than a McLaren F1.
Correct.
I mean, like, that's and it's 7,000
It's
pounds.
incredible for a mini truck.
Exact. Thanks, Tom, for that. That's wonderful. You still need to apologize to Rivian. They're gonna cry. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just to your point. I mean, it's that what those cars can do and how fast. If you can get into an, I mean, how fast can you get into an accident, and how much extra damage does that performance,
Yeah.
cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one there is just are people ready to have such a high performance type of vehicle and they're not used to it. Um, so I think, Tom, you talked about this a little bit too, but what kind of registration fee did you see? Because I was sticker shocked with my registration fee, but what did you see on your Mach-E?
So I ended up having to spend about $140 just to get mine at the time of registration. It's basically the state of Michigan charges the $140 on top of your normal fees. And we're not going to dive into every state because every state is going to be different. But Michigan is going to base your registration fee on the original MSRP of the vehicle. So you're going to have that initial fee alone, which I think for the Mach-E and our EV6 price point is going to be around like $300 a year. And then the state's going to ding you for another $140 a year just because it's an electric car. The thought process behind it is that you're not utilizing gas pumps anymore. So you're not paying the fuel tax, which is right now about 28.6 cents per gallon for Michigan. So that fuel tax obviously goes towards fixing roads in theory and other, road based operations. So that's the way the state is going to recoup its money in order to keep the revenue up.
I saw the same. My Ram registration was like $160 a year, $170 a year, and
Mhm.
my EV6 is like 440. So it's definitely a lot more expensive. But to
Mhm.
your point, we're not using the fuel tax. We're using zero fuel tax. So that's the way to offset it.
Right. And so, like, we're still in the green, so to speak, if you start looking at overall costs of ownership. But like some states, there's about 20 different states that I found that are going to have a special fee associated with electric vehicles. Like Georgia, I think is the highest that I found some research is about $215 extra. Um, California is like 100, I think, and then obviously Michigan's at 140. But I think it's going to be pretty consistent across the board.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think that the main thing for the listeners is that there's pluses to EVs, and I think we've talked about a lot of them, but there's some downsides too, and there's things that you get to consider. It's not all rose-colored glasses, and when we're talking about this stuff, and so it's just buyer beware, and that's what we're here for, is trying to help educate people.
Yeah, I think putting a nail in the insurance conversation. It's interesting to see, Tesla has its own insurance. Rivian started up its own insurance. I'd be really curious to see in the long run what happens with some of these car companies. This isn't new. Like companies have tried this before, starting their own insurance. But Tom and I's experience is it doesn't have to be crazy expensive. So if you do get an EV and you do see a massive increase, it might make sense to shop around because mine's $200 a year difference. Tom's is less expensive. Mike, I don't know what your insurance looks like from, it's been a while since you've owned a gas powered car, so you might not
Yeah,
even remember, but
I don't. Yeah, I mean, and frankly, I mean, it's going from a truck from the Model Y, and there was a small change there, but for the most part, it's been pretty close, and the MSRP on all the vehicles is about the same.
Well, I'm glad that we finally got all three of us back in the same room to do a recording here. Hopefully,
I
we can
know
Yeah,
keep it going.
it's felt
And
good. It's felt good.
you guys have a great rest of your day. Eh?
you too.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's see you guys.
Thank you for listening to Plug In for More. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, check out the one-stop EV marketplace, evuniverse.com. Until next time.